3, 2, 1, 0.
Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio. Live from the heart of the downtown east side, it's Talk Recovery Radio with Giuseppe Ganci and Darren Gaylor on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. From the streets to the studio, bringing you addiction recovery stories from real people with lived experience and real experts on today's issues. Tune in live every Thursday, noon to 1. Powered by New West Recovery. Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio.
Good afternoon, Vancouver. Hello, Mr. Darren Gaylor, co-host here, Talk Recovery Radio. Hello. My name's Giuseppe Ganci, and we're coming to you live every Thursday. And if you want to replay us, there's some streams that you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and of course on Co-op Radio archives. You can always re-listen to shows. Darren, how are you?
I'm good. Where did you go?
Where did I go? Oh, I don't know.
Well,
Where did I go? There I am. There I am.
Yeah, you can't be just a name on this show.
No, never. We just finished Pride Week here in Vancouver, and there's a picture. Which way do I go? This way, up there, of the Clean Sober Proud float. That was I think about 4 years ago. We made it snow in August in Vancouver. That was always fun. We didn't get to do the parade this year, sadly, or last year, but we still were able to put together our annual drag show that we do every year. Untoxicated didn't happen. For those of you that follow us on social media and stuff, I'm the chair of Clean, Sober, and Proud, so that's why I love talking about it. But we didn't get to do Untoxicated this year, obviously COVID, but we got to do a small Clean, Sober, and Proud outreach booth at a vendor's, they called it the Pride Market and so forth. And Darren, you stopped by for a visit. We had the recovery mural. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Tyler, Scott, and Rain, who spray painted the mural, and then people got to add recovery messages to it throughout the 3-day Pride weekend. And we had the memorial tree, and then we had a drag show for a smaller crowd, which felt like a VIP party. The people that attended were like, "This is the best one you've ever done." I'm like, "Really? There was only 100 of you here." Darren, how'd you like it?
It was great. It's that time of year. I guess you're always comparing it to the big parade and the big float that you do, and it naturally might seem like, it doesn't have that same flair, if you will. But you know what? Like, it's important, and I'm a huge ally, always will be. And it was nice. That mural, the guys dedicated and put time and energy into. Like, every year there's something that's created that's just coming from the heart, and it was nice to put some ink on that and put a little message of hope.
You got to put a message on there, and it was great to see you, and we got to do a little photo op while we were there. Also, the memorial tree was there from Recovery Day BC, and there's a lot of names on that tree. You added a name to the tree this year.
It didn't come with the same sort of inspiration as writing a message of hope on the recovery mural, but it's that thing that it's not the opposite of it. It's just the other part of it that needs to have as much color and as much dedication and as much effort put into it as the recovery mural. And I think it's whoever's idea it was. I think it's important, and it, I don't know, for me, it just gave me a moment of just, I think about my friend every single day, really. Like, I literally do. And I'm not just saying that. But I often don't know what to do with that thoughts and those feelings. So, like, just writing his name down and I used to call him numb nuts all the time. So I wrote that on there and, just had a little moment. Yeah. So thanks.
Yeah, it was pretty. I was standing by the Clean Sober Proud booth and the memorial trees in front of it, and I just saw this person just standing there a bit longer than most,
Hmm.
and so I walked up to him, and as I got closer to him, I realized he was crying, and so I just started talking to him, and he's like, he wasn't expecting to see a memorial tree for overdoses.
Right.
He wasn't even really expecting to see a sober thing either. Like he was just walking through the park, and it just, his partner had overdosed, and he is, I think he said 11 months drug free. I don't think you call it clean or sober, but he just wasn't doing drugs or anything like that. So we just talked and had a hug, and it was a moment of like why we do this. It's
Yeah.
just like he was again like just thank you, like just there was just this feeling of purpose. It's like he had an opportunity to have some emotion for his partner who had overdosed, and just so showing that there's, so he added his name and to it, and but what happened was we started talking about recovery and where he's at, and so he said he's going to come to my home group, and he's and it was just one of those things where it's just like, what,
That's
like
why.
it was hot. It
Yeah.
was a hot day in Vancouver. It was like dead grass everywhere, getting into everything, and like street food that was like not comfortable to eat because it was hot. But that moment in time just made the whole thing worth it. That late nights like just made the whole thing worth it. And
If just one person, right? Like
it was
that's
pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
if
And that's
just
what we
one
need to do. Yeah.
if just one person gets affected by the tree, if just one person listens to our show, like if just one person,
Yeah.
it's worth it. And like I think what has happened with the overdose crisis, it just became a number thing. Like, so many people dying of the same thing in such a short period of time. And then with the pandemic hitting and that sort of taking away, now we're focusing on deaths from COVID. It just felt like there's a lot of forgotten people, like,
Yeah.
that didn't get their own, sort of special thing. And so like to see how many names are actually on the
Yeah.
tree is devastating. And at the same time, it honors them as the best way, we could think of.
And this is what we've been telling. I sit on stakeholder meetings with Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and I keep saying, we need to obviously raise awareness of overdoses. But what we did was, with many other people that came to the memorial trees, we walked over to the Clean Sober Proud booth, and that's when we started talking about recovery and just the colors and the laughter and the hope and the energy. Like he really hadn't experienced that, and that's how that conversation started. And it's the missing piece in this response to the overdose crisis is the message of recovery and the message that there is hope and so forth, and that's what was an opportunity that we did and that we do every year with Clean Sober Proud. Like that booth, when you see it going down Denman or Davie or Robson, sorry, not Davie, like people are like, what is that? Like those people are sober. I even remember hearing people say like, those people aren't sober, look at them dance. Like I remember being new, the idea of dancing sober was not, like I had never danced sober
Yeah.
in my life, until I hit recovery. So we're trying to be creative and mixing all the messages of honoring those lost, but celebrating recovery and celebrating life. So I think we did a pretty good job of it over the weekend. Here, I just want to say thank you to all the volunteers, because it takes an army of people loading, unloading, being greeters, and it's emotional too, standing at a memorial tree, volunteering and all that kind of stuff. So props out to all the volunteers and everyone that helped out over the weekend. 2022, fingers crossed, we'll be back to our regular floor plans, and we've already got entertainment planned. Not going to say who, but we've got some big names coming next year, which got postponed because of COVID. So we'll see what happens. And again, thanks for everyone that participated in Clean Sober Proud during Pride weekend. We had a great time. We hope you did too. Shout out to Alma Bitches, Jailing Time, Kendall Gender. You were amazing at the show and all the other performances. Thank you very much. So you're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, powered by New West Recovery, Last Door and Westminster House, Canada's amazing recovery community. And special thanks to Vancouver Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM, that gives us space to have our show. You're either watching us live or you're replaying last week's show on the radio. It takes a week to get it on air. Special thanks to everybody that does that. And one day we will be back in the studio when we're able to share microphones, which I think is coming up, Darren. I think we're going to be in the studio by the end of next month.
All right.
So right now, sharing microphones is still a faux pas, but we'll bring in our own mics, Co-op Radio. So just let us know. We bring you guests from all over for the past 7 years, and we love talking recovery with so many people. And Darren, we are going to bring on our guest today. And who are we talking recovery with today?
Yeah, absolutely. We get to talk recovery with Mark A. Turnipseed. He's an author, model, LGBTQ columnist, addiction recovery advocate. And then we have sober coach, fitness coach, and also a coming out coach, which I've never heard before on the show. We've interviewed many people. I think that's fantastic. And we're going to talk about Mark's book, My Suicide Race, Winning Over the Trauma of Addiction, Recovery, and Coming Out. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So, I mean, I'll just say to our listeners, viewers, obviously this is a story of hope, a story of getting through the struggle, getting through, the traumas, everything. But also, the topics of suicide, coming out, and if anybody's listening that's in that darkness, that's in that sort of situation, just give us a listen all the way through. Clearly Mark's book is about overcoming, and that I don't think you're any more special than anybody else. So like your story is unique to you, but so common, I'm sure. So, yeah. Let's just like how difficult was it for you to like write this book, to like, put the memoir in there and sort of put your soul on the line? Like what was the motivation and the inspiration to do this?
Honestly, it almost felt like it had become my responsibility, so there wasn't as much of a motivation as there felt like a obligation, to share my story. I know that a lot of us, when we recover, we have this desire to give back. And it almost becomes part of our occupation. It becomes part of our lives. It becomes, something that's a necessity to our recovery. And I learned that fairly early on, about, making my meetings and coming in and sharing my experience and strength and hope. Now, the reason why I started writing it was actually not to start writing a book, but it was just to share my experience in a blog. So I had always been a writer, and I think that upon getting sober, it was, using the gifts that I naturally had. So the gifts that I naturally had to tell my story. A lot of other people getting sober, they create art. They may become painters. They may end up opening a mechanic's office. Now, there's all sorts of different ways of expressing our gratitude towards being sober and healthy. And my way just came in the form of writing. I just so happened to start training for a triathlon. And so I figured that would be like an interesting blog, is how some person came from heroin addiction, being overweight, relapsing, and then started training for a triathlon. I was like, there might be some engaging, fun, like interesting content here. And not only that, I thought that it would help me to stay engaged with my own process, and so that's why I started the blog, was just to kind of express myself.
I mean, that's fantastic. Like, I mean, I hear that often from, people that have like put themselves, in writing, to inspire that sense of duty. And, cause I think if one finds recovery, like somebody would just look at you and be like, oh, there's a healthy guy, like nobody could assume the struggles and the history and what you went through. And so, what happens to all that story, if not sort of shared. So amazing. Let's talk about like the effect of coming out, because I'm sure it's not easy for everyone. And often that's the first sort of message or response that's given to somebody's identity in that moment, if it's not sort of accepted or loved. Devastating effects.
Yeah.
It says here in some of the writing that like you were aware by the age of 6. Now, call me somewhat ignorant. I'm a heterosexual man. Like I have a 6-year-old son. Is it that young of an age where there's sort of something different going on that you identified with yourself?
A lot of the gay men that I know, they knew their whole life. There's not too many that I know who go, well, I thought that I was, and all of a sudden I wasn't. That does happen, I do believe that. I think that there might be a different cause there, different underlying, thing going on.
Right.
But for me, I knew at a very, very early age. I just knew, the whole time.
And I mean, the reason I'm asking that is because you never hear of a 6 or 7-year-old like coming out at that point. Like it's usually, in the early teens, and so that's many years of confusion.
Historically, yes, but
Right.
we are starting to see it more at a younger age, and
Okay.
and that is a great thing for our society because, especially as a parent of a 6-year-old, we don't have to live in the question. We don't have to be like, are they, like what sexuality are they? How can I help foster to the health of this child, both the emotional, the spiritual, and the physical? How am I supposed to be the best parent? Am I supposed to be nurturing this little boy's like masculine side, or what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions as a parent. Now, the coming out process, I don't actually believe that it is a very difficult thing. In fact, I believe it is no different from a lot of the other things that we have to accept in life. And especially in recovery, right? We think that becoming an alcoholic and finally accepting ourselves as an alcoholic, that the world is literally going to end. We're going to lose all of our friends. We don't know how we're going to hang out at our next Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're going to do on our next airplane. We don't know even how to go into the grocery store.
Yeah.
And honestly, there was really no difference to me. And so once I had come out with, my biggest struggle on this earth was my drug and alcohol use, right? And so once I came out with that, once I accepted that, these other little problems, they just seemed to come. And when they came, it goes, you know what? If I accepted that I was an alcoholic, I can do this too.
So a little
and
bit
they
of
came
your,
at their perfect timing. And so the sobriety had been in my life for a couple of years before my actual coming out. And it came at the perfect timing.
I find that a lot, where coming out as being sober is a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, there was the world, where I'm an airline pilot. I can't let everybody know I used to be a drug addict and all that. So I get that piece. But, the clean, sober, proud thing that you're seeing behind us, I remember, back in 2009, we started in 2008. I remember gay sober men saying, I leave town for pride, I'm triggered, during Pride, and then the other soundbite was I can't go to a sober dance that's so public because people will think I'm sober. And I was just like, oh my God, that's a thing. Like, I remember, when I don't know when you came out, but, I was like the 90s culture. And I remember people not wanting to go to Pride because people might think they're gay, and like CBC Camera, which is our, media company, would catch them on film. I'm like there's as if they're going to film you, right? But
Yeah.
that's the thing. So how did you, so coming out, then drugs and alcohol, what did you have that? Were you like, oh, I don't want anyone to know I'm sober? I mean, the party's over now that I'm
Oh
sober.
yeah.
Like, what did you go through and how did you get through that?
Yeah, yeah. And it was a similar process. I remember when I had tried to get sober many times, right? And I talk about that in my book, my different times of getting sober. It started in youth. I was sent to youth rehab.
Wow.
But much later on, as I started to rack up DUIs, then ended up in jail and things like that, and then I would get court-martialed to get sober, I would I mean, it was very difficult to say, like, I have a problem with this. I am an alcoholic now, I can't go to this party. Like, I knew inside, right, the whole time, just like I knew that I was gay, but of course I didn't want everyone to know. But that limited my ability to carry my sobriety into my life. And I think ultimately what the variable that was missing most in my continued and healthy sobriety was to define myself as an alcoholic before anything else. If I don't define myself as a recovered alcoholic before anything else, then I run the risk of losing every other identity and every other role that I actively play in life, right? I lose my stance as a father. I lose my stance as a model. I all of a sudden, like, yeah, I guess I'll always still be an author, but I'm not really connected with that book anymore. I lose my role as a son.
Right.
I mean, all of this stuff, and we have experienced this stuff in recovery. I'm not the only one who's experienced this,
So
and
I have a magic question. So you've
yes.
relapsed many times. You went to treatment when you were a youth. So you've been in and out of recovery and treatment and consequences. What was different this time around that you could share with us? Because that's always the magic. How did this work
Well,
this time?
I think it's the same as the last question, is that what was, where did I finally accept myself? And to finally accept myself, I have to be willing to take my sobriety into everything that I do, into every place that I go. I have to be willing to be able to stand in a bar or stand at my Thanksgiving dinner and say, no, I don't want a beverage because I'm a recovered alcoholic. I don't need a beverage. And I can gladly and proudly tell you that I don't need a drink, that I don't want to drink. And it doesn't matter what people think about me. That is ultimately like one of the keys that came around to me was it does not matter what people think about me anymore, because if I continue to worry about what they think about me, I'm going to die. Like, that's
Mm.
what's going to happen. I got to this point where I was trying to jump off of bridges, overdose, kill myself, kill other people. That's where my drinking and drugging had taken. And so I knew that once I started, that's where it led me. So I knew that the only way to finally do this was to proclaim it and say, guys, I'm an alcoholic. Like, accept me or don't. I don't really care, but I'm going to do what I have to do now to stay alive. You can like it or not, And then, maybe I lost a couple of friends that weren't really friends to begin with, but I gained a whole wealth of friends and a whole wealth of relationship and community that I never even knew existed.
So, Mark, were you suicidal, like not under the influence of drugs and alcohol, or was it sort of like, a catalyst of being under the influence? Like, did you find?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a catalyst. I talk, but I think it was a moderator, right? So I think it increased my chances of it,
Okay.
because I remember before drugs and alcohol, before I even knew what suicide was, when I was about 6 years old, I wanted to escape. And the only rational thing that I could think of was, well, maybe I should just die. I was like, I'm born the wrong sex. I like boys. I'm not supposed to.
Mm.
I don't know why I have this thing. I don't relate to, and then, and like all, so I just wanted to escape. And because I was so, innocent, I didn't really know what death was, but I was like, well, maybe that's like the great sleep. I just need to stay asleep. I need to be escaped. And so there was always this need to escape. And when drugs and alcohol came, they were literally just another form of suicide to me. They were just another form of escape. I was not the guy who went out drinking for fun. I went out drinking for oblivion.
Mm.
And that's why I think heroin was something that rests so well with me, was because, and Xanax, was because it gave me that great escape. It put me on that cloud where I really didn't feel anything, where I was so gone,
Yeah. When you say, that, yeah, like there was a thought process of being the wrong sex or not supposed to like boys. I mean, who gave you that message directly? Like, I mean, is that the case with most, in the closet situations where it's like they're getting a direct message that they're wrong, that who they are is wrong? Or is
Well, so
is that yourself, your own inner
yeah.
voice?
Well, I think in Giuseppe's age, right, in that coming out in the 90s age, that was rampant, right? Where it was exterior stuff telling you that it's all wrong. Well, that was the age that I was sitting there watching the news with my parents. And that's the age, like I was sitting there, I was 6 years old in 1993 when we were really starting to get a lot of media coverage, where Magic Johnson came out with AIDS, where people started dying of it all over the place. That's where it started happening. And I heard that the reason why was because of two men having sex. And I was like, huh, that's weird. I
Mm.
was like, why? I don't get why that happens. And of course, hearing it over discussions on the news, and my parents talking and applying scripture to it and thinking that, oh, well, it's because God has damned the gay people, and just hearing that type of stuff had an impact on me. Now, it later on in my life, though, it became a lot more accepted. And so in my college days, when I knew that it was safe to come out. Like I knew that it was. I saw around me, I had gay friends, right? But I still had this this burden of my childhood, this structure that I was not able to break free from. This structure, a similar type of structure, I guess, where I go, I don't know if I can exist. I don't know if I can be without drinking. That's what I thought is, I don't know if I can actually be a gay person. I don't know if I can do these things that I do and still be gay, right? So I mean, that was a big thing when I came out, and that's a big reason why I write my health and wellness column now, My Best Gay Self, is because it's about how to be a gay person in the gym, how to be a gay person in the health and wellness community. Because like Giuseppe said, a lot of, and especially in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, historically, gay men had to gather in dark bars. They had to gather in hiding out in these these lounges and stuff that were all hidden and dark and grim, and so historically the gay
You're
community
reminding
has
me
been
of
unhealthy.
you're reminding me of some good times, actually.
Yes, yeah, I mean, some great times for sure,
I
but
mean, the
very
cocaine
closeted.
was so good back then. It's
Yeah,
just like they ruined it. No, thank God I got clean. I mean, it's
yeah.
just like I mean, and that's the thing. It's like when I grew up, I remember, the first gay bars I ever went to, we used the back door. I mean, I'm not aging myself either, but like I just remember we used the back door. And then when I'm from Ontario and I would go to Detroit pretty much 6 nights a week because we would chase the dollar drink night. But you went to those bars, they all had security. You parked a valet. It was kind of this controlled environment, not just for drugs, but also for customer safety. I
Yeah.
mean, big money in the gay bars. That's all changed now. We got Grinder. You got all this stuff going on. I mean, being gay is, changes over time. So about coming out and addiction and so forth, there's a lot of, you say, unforeseen links between coming out and using drugs, being gay. I work in a treatment center. I used to work with Darren, it's part of this show. We don't have a gay program, but we have a lot of gay clients that come here, LGBT clients, trans clients, where we organize huge events for the LGBTQ community, but they're like, where's your gay program? I need a specific gay group. I used to be that guy too, where it's just like, I need to be in a room with gay men talking about gay issues and not.
What binds us together is our addictions. This extra stuff that's outside of us, that doesn't bind us. And so actually when I first came out, I more so came out so that I could or I started going to gay and sober meetings so that I could learn how to navigate the gay world, and find different relationships in the gay world. Meanwhile, I continued to go to my straight meeting for my recovery.
Oh my God,
And
I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah. So, and I think unfortunately, like most of the gay and sober meetings and conferences and things that I've been to are more so about the fraternizing and relating over our gayness. But I've got to remember that my gayness is not my sobriety. My sobriety is separate from that, and I've got to keep it separate. I got to remember that it's first. I got to remember that even if I'm not sober, I'm also not able to be gay. And being myself is like the greatest the greatest joy that I've ever had, but if I start drinking and drugging, where does that lead me? That leads me to death. And that means I don't get to experience this wonderful gift that I have, that I now can be very proud of myself and now can finally experience love as it's been meant for me for my whole life, right? And so I'm not willing to risk that, so I've got to remember to treat my sobriety first.
Well, and I think this is a great example why we need individuals like yourself, like that are the coaches, the mentors, the ones that have gone through it, the first ones to navigate that, because it doesn't matter, like, even if somebody's sitting here listening to this show, they're still going to go through all the feelings and emotions and setbacks and insecurities in their process of recovery. Because I think, imagine it's in ethnicities and I mean, what would recovery be defined as? Something that we can't do together, like we can't, love the differences. And that would be horrific if that was the case. But I also understand being new, sort of needing, to find your comfort zone and in specific areas like, your sexuality or your culture or whatnot. Right. So as a coach, you can see the importance of that. Someone that understands that progression and that process for somebody that's brand new. Like, what do you say to that? Do you tell somebody to keep going to their, gay only meeting if they feel comfortable there? You know what I mean? Like what's your advice to someone new in that situation?
I think that's part of it. I mean, I've been lucky now that I'm in South Florida to I've found a gay and sober meeting of which I believe is the solution. So I go to it and I recognize them talking about the solution and not their gay problems, right? I don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous to hear about gay problems. But you hear the same thing in straight AAs too. So you go to straight AA, they're talking about all these relationship problems. And it's like, I don't need to know marital problems. That's what a marriage and family counselor is about.
I love
Like,
it.
I need to go because I need my alcoholism. And what we have to do, what I do, like as a coach in that aspect, is I simplify it for them. You know, we need to just pay attention to our sobriety. Strip everything down that you think that you are, and realize that you aren't any of that stuff until you fix this alcoholism. And then stop bringing those other issues, because those other issues are absolutely imaginary in your head as long as you're an alcoholic. They're actually fake. Most of them are actually fake. And
I
we
remember
don't have
somebody
a firm
saying,
grasp on
you
them.
know, some of the worst things I've ever experienced in life never even happened. It was just my imagination and my forecasting the future that never ever came to fruition. So coming out coach, did I hear that correctly? So coming out coach, I mean, recovery coaches, all that. So what's a coming out coach? And how do you what do you do for a coming out coach?
You know, I actually haven't marketed that at all,
Okay.
and I haven't actually been a coming out coach to anybody.
Okay.
But I would be willing to help somebody on their
Yeah.
process of coming out. You know, because ultimately what a coach is a cheerleader on the side that helps somebody stay focused, right? And when things start to get hard, they say, keep the path, you're going to be okay. You know, you are ready for this, right? That's basically all it is. And so, you know, I think with the coming out coach, I think y'all must have seen that on my website.
I
Did you
did.
see that on my
Yeah,
website?
we do some research. Yeah, we research our guests. Great photos, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I need to update a lot of that website. I have a whole bunch of new things going on that are really exciting as well.
Yeah.
And the recovery coaching is also going by the wayside, so I'm not able to spend as much time there. I'm actually not even I don't even have any personal training clients right now. So everything is starting to now turn into one big project rather than all these different things, because it is a mouthful. Like what you said on my introduction, it's a mouthful trying to wear all those different hats.
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful, like experiencing a lot of those different things.
I mean, I think that's, you know, when somebody's, you know, looking for help, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I need an overall coach. Like, sometimes our ignorant brains need, I just have an alcohol problem, or I'm just struggling with coming out. So, you know, that's the invitation. That's the thing that's going to make me feel safe enough, you know, to reach out to someone. And I mean, I'm sure there's many examples of, you know, kids out there struggling with coming out that don't yet have a substance abuse problem, where that's not it's literally just unsafe everywhere and anywhere around them, you know, to come out and know it. And what a struggle that would be, you know? So I was impressed when I saw that was a specific, you know, topic.
And it's also bringing awareness, like coming out can be traumatizing, and trauma is, you know, the root of addiction. And so if we can talk about this and people understand, like coming out, you know, for some is easy, for some it isn't, and we need to honor that, because we like my coming out story was, you know, I had 3 lives. I had the Italian with long curly hair that went to church with his mom. You know, those were good times. And then I had this, like, I was going to bars when I was in high school. I had this high school identity. And then I was going to Backstreet and Menjo's like on a Thursday and Friday, Saturday night. Like it was just insane. I wish I never I don't regret it, but like it didn't have to be so complicated, right? I even
Yeah.
had wardrobes like hiding in my car. I had a suitcase
Yeah.
in my car where I'd get changed because I couldn't wear the same clothes I would wear in different, environments. Like that was all crazy. Is that why I became a crackhead? I don't know. I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? But I found the solution. I was told, figuring out why isn't the
Yeah.
solution. It's like, what are you going to do about it? But you said something at the beginning of the show that just kind of put a stamp on approval on my crazy life. It's like you said, once you become aware of this, it's giving back becomes part of the process. And I remember going to Toronto Pride 15, 16, 17 years old. And the only thing I saw was a beer garden, clubs, the dark rooms, all that kind of stuff. I didn't see a big banner that said the word sober. And that's what our goal is like just out there, ridiculously loud. So some 16-year-old might just be like, really?
Yeah.
Sober? And you're doing the same thing because you're out there and you got this book and it's like really like somebody's going to talk about their progression to suicide, to dying. That's a big deal. So the book, it's available online, it's available on your website. So when somebody reads this book, what's your goal for the reader to get out of it?
Just to realize that we're not alone. I think that that's the number one theme there is that we're not alone. I throughout life we accumulate a whole bunch of different little lies to help us to become what we think we're supposed to be on the outside so that we're not alone. And we continue to carry on those until we end up looking back and looking at ourselves and going, oh my gosh, who am I? I'm different when I'm different from the person that I'm projecting. And that ultimately leads us to where we can't live up to our full potential because we're holding ourselves, we're not able. And so look, it starts off with the line, this is for all the liars out there. This book is not for all the homosexuals. It's not for all the addicts. It's not for all the people who are suicidal. It's for all the liars out there. Because those little lies, as we continue to build on those little lies, they can lead us to things like drug addiction. They can lead us to things like suicide and homicide and slippery slopes towards mental health issues and narcissism and all of that stuff. That comes from our little itty bitty lies. And so ultimately, we're not alone. And there's no point in lying about being scared, about being alone, about feeling nervous, about feeling depressed. Rather, that's something that we can use together to grow stronger as a community, stronger as individuals. You can get closer in your relationships with it. We can use the things that we think that we need to lie and hide to actually open our minds and open our experiences up to a whole new level, open our communities. Like I said, when I came out as an alcoholic, a whole new community opened up to me that I didn't even know existed, a community that was so much more rewarding than my going into the bar at noon and waiting for my 5 o'clock rumblers to come in, so much more rewarding than that. And then when I came out as gay, like I didn't know how incredibly embracing that community was. I had no idea how incredibly loving the gay community can be. I knew how different they could also be and how kind of judgy and mean they could be. And that turned me off, but I didn't know how loving they could be. And I remember the first time that I went to a gay bar and someone rubbed up against my shoulder, and it was the very first time in my life that a man rubbed up against my shoulder, and when he did, he didn't jerk back and look at me in kind of a shocking way and kind of totally distance himself. Rather, he looked at me and gave me a little hug. And I go, oh my gosh, that was an incredible interaction. And that's the way that I've kind of began to, that started my journey, where I was like, this whole coming out thing is actually quite pleasant.
Well, when I came to recovery, I thought I was an expert on being gay, and then I started to thaw out and detox and stabilize and open up to spirituality and that kind of concept. And then I learned things like, just how homophobic I was, as a
Yeah,
gay
yeah.
man. I didn't even think that was possible, but as a gay man, how homophobic I really was, and transphobic, and how I had to make changes and understand, I used to balk at the idea of privilege, and now I understand, like, I had the ability to go to a bar with a security guard, and all that kind of stuff, and like the privilege I had in life, and you just start learning these things, and the idea, I don't know about you, maybe you can share on it, becoming friends with other gay men and other straight men, because I don't know about you, but like, was not friends with straight men and gay men. It was just, get out of my bed by 7 a.m. because I got shit to do today, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how did you come to terms with, because there's being a gay man, and then there's sexuality, and there's all that other stuff that goes on, and how did you work with that? We still got time on the show. I really want some listeners to hear about
Yeah,
that
and
piece, because it's
this
real
is
for us.
this is definitely some of the type of content that would be helpful to talk about in a coaching scenario, because coming out, we all know how to have sex, right? So coming out to me wasn't about sex. Coming out was about relationship. And I remember experiencing, finally, like, once I had accepted myself, I remember being able to stand in a man's presence without this, like, I always thought people kind of knew that I was gay, right? And it always made me a little bit nervous and a little bit on edge, and I could never quite be myself, because I always had this, like, am I presenting myself masculine enough? Am I presenting myself not gay enough? And then finally, once I accepted myself and goes, it doesn't matter what this guy thinks. He can like me or not, it doesn't matter. Like, I can finally be myself, and I'm going to be myself. I was able to finally be present. Always had this, like, real hard time listening and engaging and, like, making good eye contact with people. And I was always kind of nervous. And I realized that part of that was because I was always kind of hiding. I was never really there because I was always so concerned about covering up and masking. And after I came out, I realized I could be more authentic in my relationships. And ultimately, what that led to was much more enriching relationships. With my father, I'm able to sit there at dinner and actually, like, really engage and really talk to him. But I also see this with relationships with my children as well. I'm able to play more actively. I'm able to free myself and play in this way that is natural to me. And so when it comes to relationships, like male to male relationships, friends relationships, I'm also able to finally, like, tell a friend, what I need, because my needs were not being met. I wasn't able to express what I needed. I wasn't able to express what I wanted and what I loved. I was holding that back. And so now, because these people actually know me, I can now actually know these people as well. I can actually be open to who they really are as well. And that is kind of the way of destroying that internalized homophobia, I believe, is through relationships, and by further and further accepting myself, then I'm able to further and further allow acceptance of other people.
That's, I mean, allowing the acceptance of their discomfort possibly as well, like that there's still a generation or people being even raised still, like, to not be comfortable with gay marriage and meeting a gay man or giving a hug. And what does this mean if I give you a hug as a heterosexual man in a meeting? Like that.
Yeah.
That is just, there's an overall acceptance for other people and whatever journey they're on. I think that without that understanding, I mean, everything's difficult. Being myself is difficult without just letting people respond the way they're going to respond.
Yeah.
Whether it's healthy
or on Oprah somewhere, but I never understood it until I was ready to understand it. And it's just like, oh my God, I never thought of that, and life gets pretty good when I got there anyway. So, I appreciate you being on the show. We're running out of time here. So your future projects you're working on, any new books, anything you want to let our audience know, how to get a hold of you, your blog?
Yes, yeah. So I'm actually writing a couple of new books. Some are fiction as well. It's more than a couple. I'm writing a few. A couple of them are recovery charged fitness, which is a curriculum. And it's a curriculum for addicts to engage in exercise, whereby exercise doesn't become another addiction. And so that's a pretty excited, like 6-week program that I'm creating. I'm also continuing to write the health and wellness column with my best gay self, and it's with South Florida Gay News. I'm pretty excited to see where that goes in the next coming months. And then I will continue doing the modeling and whatnot as well. But all of this is kind of consolidating into this beautiful brand that I'm creating, and it's called Halo 42. And Halo 42, it runs off the premise that there is a rainbow within. There is a rainbow within all of us. This gay pride, these rainbows don't necessarily represent gay, right? They represent a beauty. They represent a hope. They represent a purity. They represent us not living a lie. They represent people following their bliss and living their truth. And what Halo 42 means, Halo 42 is actually, the logo is an upside down rainbow. And upside down rainbows exist around us all the time. They're actually more frequently not seen. They're more frequent than a regular rainbow, but you have to be at 42 degrees to be able to perceive them. And so the whole idea is that you have to be at a certain angle of which you can perceive your beauty before you can accept your beauty. And so that's what we're doing. We're creating a brand. We're creating a brand that's going to include a line of beauty, that's going to include a nutritional product, and it's also going to include some fashion product. And it's also going to include some publications, blogs, and a little community online and stuff to help people recognize their beauty both within and without, so that they can fully step into and experience their true rainbow and their halo.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
You should definitely add speaker to that list. Mark, I interview a lot of people. I sit on a lot of committees. I talk to like stakeholder group, like you name, where it's like, straight people owe us, kind of attitude. And it's very uncomfortable because nobody owes me anything, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel any of that in this interview. And I really want to acknowledge that, because it's like, this is my time. It just seems like it's coming from a place of humility. And I just really appreciate that. I'm glad that you found recovery after multiple relapses. A lot of people out there say recovery doesn't work. Yes, it does. Just some people, it takes a bit longer, and you're proof of that. And we really appreciate you being on the show today. Darren, any final notes?
I just love that. Like, recovery is possible. Maybe you just got to be at that right angle.
Yeah.
To see it, that
Yeah.
perspective shift that you described. I just see, like, there's so many things that I just had to get myself into a certain position to see it, that it
Totally
exists. I love it. Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Conversation today.
Is there a website or anything online yet for Halo 42?
Yeah. Halo 42 is just beginning. So we have a little website, halo42.com, and you can join on to the newsletter, and you will be updated. We've just kind of started collaborating to create our first beauty product, and super excited to launch it. We've also got some headbands coming out for little halos, so we're super excited about that as well.
You'll have
So
to
we're
come. You'll have to come to Pride in 2022 and set up a little booth at our Clean Sober Proud thing. That is
we're going to
awesome.
be all over in 2022. It's going to be
Right on.
absolutely beautiful.
And how do people get your book?
You can get my book, My Suicide Race. You can get it from my website at markaturnipseed.com, where I will sign one of these copies that I have at home, write a little note for you, and sign it and send it to you. That's markaturnipseed.com. Or you can purchase them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can also go to your local bookstore and say, hey guys, do you have My Suicide Race? No, we don't have My Suicide Race, but we can order you a copy. So any bookstore can also order you a copy.
All right, support Mark here, and we'll post the links to everything in our Facebook pages. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio. Darren and I. Darren, good to see you. We come to you live every Thursday, noon to 1, 7 years of shows, hundreds of guests, thousands of listeners.
Woo!
Thank you, everybody. You can catch us on our replay streams as well, and we'll see you next week. And once again, thanks to everybody that came to our Vancouver Pride events. Mark, pleasure talking to you. Looking forward to your successes. Darren, see you next Thursday.
See you next week, guys. Thanks,
Bye,
Mark.
everyone. Bye
Thank
from New West
you.
Recovery. Take care. Bye-bye.